All right, welcome back, guys. My next guest, she played field hockey in high school. She collects vintage handbags, which I personally saw a gorgeous one when she was in Cannes, and I'm sure she scooped up a few more. She lives in the quote Love and Basketball house. Founder and CEO of Native Tongue Communications, Marissa Nance. Good to see you.
Hi, how are you?
It is so good to see you. We were just chatting offline that last time we saw each other was Cannes, and so tell me about these vintage handbags because I saw the one you had on your hip while you were there. I was like, this lady's got style.
Ah, well, I had a four-legged child. I never had two-legged children, so my handbags are essentially where that college tuition would have gone had I had two-legged children. And I tell people it's like my sport. I don't play club basketball or club soccer, but I'm pretty vicious when it comes to the world of competitive vintage handbag shopping.
I feel you. And what better place than Cannes to go ahead and collect some more? I scooped one up for my wife while we were there for her birthday, and it was. You're right. It's pretty, and this wasn't vintage, so it was pretty violent as far as like fighting
Well,
for these bags.
I will tell you a secret. There is a great place, not in Cannes, but in Monaco, that is
Mm.
a vintage kind of consignment vintage store. And maybe the second time I went to Cannes, my husband actually came with me, and we moseyed up to Monaco because at that point neither of us had ever been there. And he got me a beautiful Chanel bag there, but you have to get to Monaco on the train or car to get
See, that's that next year. That's my go-to is not the vintage bag, but maybe if my wife is tagging along. But I want to pack a tuxedo. I promised myself I was going to do it this past year, but I wanted to pack up like a black tuxedo and take the train up to Monaco and then like roll into the casino. And
James Bond that
yeah,
casino, like a
I've
baby
literally never
James
gambled in
Bond
my
it.
life. Yeah, but I could see it just to be in the moment.
Oh my God, yeah. That's what you see a lot of when, if you go at the right time of day, you see a lot of folks just rolling in.
Yeah, I love it. So what so we talk about love and basketball. I played college basketball for 2 years before I blew out my knee. But Love and Basketball is one of my favorite movies. It's my brother who's a college basketball coach, women's college basketball coach. So give our listeners a little bit more. You say you live in the Love and Basketball house. What does that
So
mean?
if you've seen the movie Love and Basketball, which is a classic movie, I think it recently had either its 25th or now maybe its 30th anniversary.
Mhm.
I'll play you for your heart. I live in the house where that basketball hoop is. If I took my laptop with the camera and I went to my front door and we looked outside, you would see the Love and Basketball hoop in
That
my
is
driveway.
oh, so you actually live in the house. That's
I live in the Love and Basketball
Do you
house.
ever have people just like stopping by
Every
randomly?
month, at least once a month, I pull up my driveway and someone is there taking pictures.
Just randomly taking pictures.
Randomly taking pictures.
I
Hey,
need to
you
get your
don't
address.
mind, do you?
Yeah, not at all. Well, then on top of that, because I said quote live in love and basketball, but also I asked you because I was like, there's got to be some sort of connection there. But last name Nance, and for those whose listeners are as old as I am, one of my favorite slam dunk contests participants is Larry Nance, and you said that's actually your cousin.
That's a cousin. Cleveland, baby. Cleveland.
I love
So,
it. And then now Nance Jr. is playing in the league. That's wild. So and I love this because we do have a lot of listeners, and it's not by design, I promise you. But we always have podcast guests that are on that are both sports enthusiasts. They played college, but give me the history. I asked you right before we started recording, but the picture right above your left shoulder is an iconic picture of your father.
my father,
Football.
who was part of an award winning team at Humboldt University, he was like a football journeyman through college, and eventually he landed at Humboldt, and that's where he graduated from, and that's an award winning team. And he's got some great stories. I was born in Eureka, California, and told the first black baby born in Eureka, California. So, what do you think about that?
That's crazy.
Um, and then maybe not maybe a little sad story is my father was one of the last people to see RFK before he came down to LA and was shot by Sirhan Sirhan. He was my father being 6'6" and a huge guy. when RFK was in Eureka in that area of California. My father and some of his teammates were guarding him, were acting as security
Oh,
as
wow.
he was going and meeting people who were laborers and working
Mhm.
in the field. And he put him on a plane and sent him down to LA, and we know what happens next.
Yeah. Wow. So growing up in a family, and then obviously you were an athlete yourself playing field hockey in high school. What was that like? And has the impacts that it has had on who you are today as a human? And side note for our listeners, definitely go out and YouTube Brand Innovators. She spoke on cultural shifters in the sports and entertainment. And by far, oftentimes people in Cannes kind of get like monotone, but you by far blew up the whole panel and really made it extremely fun and I say in a good way, uncomfortable for people in the room. But what was it like just being pushed, having such iconic figures around you, your father and others?
It, growing up, I was the only girl in a family of athletes. So my dad played football, cousins in basketball. My other cousin is a professional golfer, and he played the last round of the Hogan before it became the Nike Tour. So I've always had very much less competitive, though I am a bit competitive, more of a team spirit. So it was ingrained in me from the time I was very young that you can't get anywhere by yourself. So, what you can do is be the best you and define what that is and carve a place for yourself in the world. But that place isn't solitary.
Mhm.
You have to then be the best you and find others who complement who you are. And together as a team, you can go far. And so that's what I've tried to do throughout my career. I spent 30 years at Omnicom, and I hope I did that. And I think I did that when I was there. And for the last 6 years, I've had my own agency. And that's something I espouse. And anyone who works for and with me understands that there's no I in team. It's not just me, it's all of us. And that's how we get ahead. And that's how we get to tomorrow.
Yeah, and we're gonna dive deep into your career too because it's definitely an iconic one. But I love what you're saying here because I think so often it's almost like when you're picking a basketball team, right? You have to have certain people that are the leaders. You have to have the guy that's going to box out and rebound. And
Right.
it's I think oftentimes when people are building out teams, they miss that, right? In a world of technology, especially, it's kind of like all right, I just need carte blanche, everybody to look, act, and behave the same, and we'll lean heavily on technology. But where you're going, and which I love, and I'd love for you to kind of expand on more, is you need those different inspirational levels, people
Yeah.
that push other people, and then you also need those people that are gonna do the grunt work. But also, it's imperative for those people to exist because if it doesn't, then the whole, in your case, the agency doesn't work, right?
The agency doesn't work. I mean, in your basketball analogy, you need a spud web and you need a shack, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody can be 7 feet plus, and not everybody can be 6 feet, Muggsy Bowles, right? So you need everyone to play a role, and yes, be the best they can at that role. I'm not saying don't excel at who you are, but what I'm saying is don't do it to the detriment of ignoring and forgetting and not seeing those around you who then lift you up even higher. And you bring up technology, and this may not be a popular statement. I'm not a huge user of AI. I know that AI can certainly be something that supports us. AI can be something that makes life a little easier, but I think humans and humanity, as a rule, we've become extremist. And as opposed to using AI in that way, which would be positive to support us and help us be better people, we're beginning to use it as a crutch, which you
Mhm.
alluded to. And when you use it as a crutch, then everybody's doing the exact same thing all of the time because the AI is the AI is the AI. And we lose that moment and that very sharp laser focus of singularity that each of us can bring to a table. And I mean, I think that's when it all starts to fall apart.
Well, I'm with you, and I think it's also the personalities, right? I alluded to one of the things that, and look, you were on stage with Julie Morris, who heads up SVP for the NBA. You had a gentleman at Maximum Effort. You had someone
Yeah.
from IBM, and again, they were all fantastic. But I think what made each person fantastic is what we as humans are, right? Like our different personalities, our different cultures, our different experiences in life, even our different things that we love.
Right, right.
You and I, our wives could, my wife and you could hit it off because you would talk about vintage handbags, but you and I would hit it off because of basketball and culture. And I believe I'm with you. Like, I think tech is important, AI is important, but I think we have to be cautious of the loss of culture and the loss of what, especially in the US, what makes us all so amazingly unique is we come from different backgrounds and we come from different experiences. And in the work world, specifically the ad world, that could lead to some serious problems if you remove the personality and culture from it.
And it's being compounded by external pressure points now in terms of a politicized world and a deculturalized world. And more and more of what makes us unique is being sought to be removed.
Mhm.
And I don't think people have very long term vision when they're doing that, and they don't see that it's going to negatively impact everyone, including themselves.
Yeah. I was same time last year at Cannes, Will I Am was on stage. And I don't know if you've and maybe you could talk a little bit about that, but I love what he's doing with AI because he's actually teaching AI culture.
Hmm.
And if you recall, he's also utilizing I guess the old school radio DJ model is he's creating these DJ AI bots, but he's putting in the accent, he's putting in the culture, he's putting in that entire aspect. And I think that side of it's kind of unique, is that you can disrupt and create what we act as humans. What are your thoughts on that?
I A few things. One, I haven't tracked it, so I'd be interested to see where it's gone, where it's grown, and
Hmm.
how they've evolved. Did they evolve in a way,
Hmm.
in terms of their self learning, that we wanted them to,
Hmm.
or did they do exactly what they wanted, and is that the path we thought they'd go down? So that's a curious and interesting question to answer. But for every one Will I Am, there are 15 others who don't think that.
Right.
And if so, our pot is 100 people. Maybe we've got three folks who think like Will I Am
Hmm.
and 97 who don't. And we've got to work on a pipeline of inclusivity as we think about the people who launch those AI journeys. And I think once we settle in on that, if we do, we might not ever, and who knows where we'll end up. Um, I think then we can all begin to relax a little bit because we're going to get a diaspora of support and input, and versus a homogeneous, scary
Hmm.
situation, right? So I can only hope that happens.
Yeah. Well, and especially, and I'd love for you to expand on, like, in the ad world where we live in. I had a friend the other day that none of my friends know what I do for a living. It's quite comical. None of my friends also listen. I found out the other day to my podcast, which is wild because we have 35,000 plus subscribers and here we are. But here nor there. But we talk about this a good bit. And one of my friends made the comment the other day. They said, what you guys do in the ad space is really persuade people to make purchases.
Yeah.
And you do it in such a unique and thoughtful way. So if you remove culture, if you remove personality, like, to your point, like the ad world, in my opinion, is the first one that's hit. And then products become hit immediately after because of, you're leaning too much on tech and you're not having the culture. I'm a big sneakerhead and obviously talked about being a basketball guy. Culture had a massive impact on why I have 200 plus pairs of Nike Dunks. And
Right.
that was the culture that I would have never been introduced to, even though from New Orleans, the New York side of hip hop really kind of made that Nike Dunk what it is today. And then obviously some guy named Michael Jordan, but
I One of the first projects we worked on as an agency at Native Tongue was with a guy who played basketball in Cleveland and now he plays in LA. I'm a very proud person from Cleveland. I'm a Clevelandite, a Clevelandonian, a Clevelandite, and at the time, this is now a few years ago, his desire was to launch a shoe in honor of his mother, his wife, and his young daughter. She wasn't newborn, but his young daughter. And he walked into the room and he realized there's no one here who understands that journey. who
Mm,
looks and really sounds like them. Now, no absolutes in life, so I don't want someone to say I was there, but there's no one there.
sure.
And so we were able to partner with Nike and design the first shoe for and by women of color, Black women, that Nike ever did, the LeBron 17, 16, 16 and 17. And the first shoe sold out in 4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So to your point of sneakerheads and culture, it was a shoe had never been done like it before. And to this day, I don't know that a shoe has ever equaled really what it achieved and what it brought to life in terms of uniqueness and the vision behind it. And that happened because three women of color came in and designed it together.
That's amazing. And so as we kind of we'll go backwards here in your career. So you spent 30 years at Omnicom.
I did. Almost to the day, 30 years at Omnicom. So from Cleveland, I went to Howard University very proudly, left Howard, and I went to New York. And while I was at Howard, I was studying film, and I had gotten a fellowship to write movies in California. And before the end of the year, I got a letter because, I'm a woman of a certain age, and it was a letter, not an email. And it said, "We regret to inform you that the mentors have the fellowship is disbanded because the mentors have stolen basically the mentees' ideas, passed them off of their own, and it's under illegal." Like, we're getting sued, is
Oh,
what they
wow.
were trying to dance around. And so I kind of looked up and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my father, may he rest in peace, said, "Well, you can always come back to Cleveland and work with me at State Farm." And I said, as much as I love State Farm and everything it's done for our family, I don't know that's what I want to do. And he said, "I'm going to give you enough money for 1 month. So in 1 month's time, you have to get a place, you have to get a job, you have to get a place to live, and I have to feel like, you're safe." And so I got on the Peter Pan bus from Washington, D.C. to New York City, and Howard gives you so many things, and one of those things is an incredible network of support,
Hmm.
just a net of people surround you and catch you when you need to be caught. And I ended up with three interviews, and one of them was at BBDO. And I picked BBDO because at the time I thought I wanted to write movies, and Phil Dusenberry was the president. I think that was his title. I don't know if CEO, president of BBDO, and he had written The Natural. Speaking of sports, everything goes back to
What
that
a great
sports.
movie.
An academy of when I thought, well, if this guy works there and he did that, then this is the place for me. And so I ended up at BBDO in the media group, but working in the branded entertainment content development group, which at the time people weren't talking about it. And they were one of the originals. They had done the Texaco Star Theater. They had helped launch soap operas with a soap. They're called soap operas because soap companies sponsored them. All of that originated there at BBDO, and there was still one person there who was, in charge of branded entertainment and native content. And so I wiggled my way into a job with him, and he was still a mentor and a dear friend of mine to this day. And we launched shows like Survivor and Top Chef and The Biggest Loser. We worked with Fred Smith, another icon at
Hmm.
FedEx, on a small movie called Castaway, helping integrate and write all of the FedEx that was in that movie with Tom Hanks. So we had an extraordinarily good run, and I like to think I am probably one of the preeminent experts in the world of branded entertainment and native content today.
Wow. Like there's so much there, but I'll tell you a personal one. That's since you were on the FedEx team for that, um, that was the first movie that I watched with my now wife, girlfriend in college was
Ah!
Castaway. And I laugh about it because if you knew my wife, it was kind of like that's the movie you go see with a girl. Like, no, like it is the most quiet movie the entire time, but it could also, but
It's a romance. It truly is. It's a romance on so many different levels. Certainly, him wanting to get back. His relationship with his job was his life, right? And it was
Mhm.
his partner. And then, Wilson,
Yep.
those dark, quiet caves, lonely nights. I know I'm teasing, but all of it saying it definitely was. There was a drumbeat of romance throughout the whole thing about him
What
really having this force pulling him back home.
Yeah, and so what was overarching across all of those? And I want to dive deeper into Survivor because obviously that's an iconic show that's gone on forever and ever. I won't mention the reality show that I was on, but you could look it up at a later time. But it was also my dream was always to be on Survivor, and I ended up on this other show. But that's here nor there. But what was it like? Because you were the early days, right? Because Friends was a big one that would have product placement, but on the branded native side, like it's interesting because native today is literally everywhere, and it's the most important thing, whether it blends within influencers or natively within ads. We have a podcast guest that talks about that as well. Her experiences. But what was it like in those early days introducing a TV show, a movie to say, hey, this is why these two should intertwine within each other?
You know, you spoke earlier about what we do in marketing, and sometimes I tell people I'm not the brightest bulb in the hallway, and I think marketing is fairly simplistic. What your friend said, we sell things to people, we get people to buy what we're selling them, and I think it's even broader than that. We
Mhm.
just get people to do what we want them to do. And when you're best at it is not when you push something on someone and get them to do it, it's when you pull them in. And so to me, even 30 years ago when I began this journey, and today even more so, if someone says to me, nothing against creative shops, but if someone says to me, where's your reel for Native Tongue, the commercials you've done? We've done in these 7 years, 8 years, 3 or 4. We don't really do commercials. We build content that we know at its heart and core is an extension of your service or your product, the narrative you want anyone and everyone to have. And we build it in such a way that we surround it with engagement and entertainment for every specific audience. At Native Tongue, we talk about microcultural, and it's a word that I own. When I started, people say, well, you have a multicultural agency, and I was offended by it because I just don't like the word. And I said, what we have in 2019 when I launched is data and insights and analytics, and we can drill deeper and deeper and deeper. So anyone who comes to you and says, I'm going to produce a 30-second spot that reaches African American women 25 to 54, if you're not running for the hills, if you hear something like that,
Yes.
then you really shouldn't be doing what you're doing as well. If someone comes to you and says, I'm going to create a narrative, a piece of content, whether it be through an influencer and social, be it long form, short form, however it may be and however it may come to life, a la Survivor, and it's going to pull in these specific nano micro audiences in a way that will create immediate engagement and impact, that's the person you want to sit with because that's how you're going to stand out. And that's why we explored something like Survivor. Mark Burnett's mission and vision was without fail, and he knew exactly who he was speaking to and how he was going to speak to them. And we knew how to wrap our products within that vision and that narrative. So when you
Yeah.
can do something like that, as we see however many years later, you tend to find success.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. And I want to go deeper into the micro because you were very vocal, and I was silently applauding you too because it's so easy to throw like the multicultural tag on things. But we as a society, we're more a part of we're like all about puns in this podcast so far, but we're more about like tribes, right? Like
Right.
you sit within tribes, and your tribes in today's world, I would argue that we don't all look alike. Like I think if you and I live closer and we have a couple more cans under our belt, we'll probably be best friends. And we're not the same gender, we're not the same ethnicity, but we're more part of who we are as tribes. And I love that because, we'll in the out of home space at Lamar, we'll get these requests all the time from agencies and like, we want to target Hispanics with an affinity towards soccer with 2+ kids. And it's like, what? Like you're Adidas.
Right.
Like really what you want to do is you want to target a soccer enthusiast, and then a soccer enthusiast looks, acts, and behaves completely different. But when they're put into that tribe or they're put inside that stadium or even at their kid's soccer match on, Saturday morning, you look up and down the lines in Anytown, USA, and you have probably like the most different cultures, but they're all there for one
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
And if you just have to, as I believe we as marketers are anthropologists and sociologists,
Yes.
and if we don't take the time to build empathy, then we're for naught. So when you say that, Hispanic soccer, 2+ kids, what we know, because I take the time to understand that cohort and community, even though that's not how I identify, is you've now cut yourself off, because if you have children that are 2 to 7 within a Hispanic household in a certain geography, then they're going to be at the parks playing as a family with other families. If you
Yes.
have Hispanic children who are 8 to 16, 17, they're probably playing a club sport, and it's much more organized because they bleed soccer on the weekends, and they're now building this way out. It's very similar to, as we look at, somewhat stereotypically, but it's a truth. There's truth in a lot of this. With African Americans, there was this very much this when I lived in New York and they were playing basketball downtown, at the Rutger, at
Oh,
Rutger Park, right?
it's my
Like
dream,
that's
by the way. Yeah.
that's what's happening. So you have to fully understand who you want to speak to and why and where they're going to be. And if you don't choose to take that extra time to be empathetic and do that work and do that homework, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah. And you picked up on that early on in your career, I'm assuming, especially within Survivor, because again, everyone on that show looked, act, and behave differently, but it was the personalities that came out. It was that tribal, cross tribal effect. And then obviously you throw in like Applebee's for, the challenge win. And it's like you as viewers, you're starving like them, not physically, but you're starving like them. And your mindset is like, God, I can't imagine like what's going through their head as they're going through this challenge. And all they want to do is go eat baby back ribs. And then you as participants, as the viewers, you're like, baby back ribs.
Right. You're being pulled in. That goes back to, I'm not just pushing something out and someone watches and goes, I'm really leaning on the edge of my seat. I'm literally
Mm-hmm.
getting pulled in, and people are wanting to learn more. I've got that carrot that I've dangled, and that's really what's pulling them in and keeping them there. We want to create a cohort of allies and ambassadors that then evangelize beyond. And so that's how you do it. You pull them in. You're not just pushing out your conversation and story.
Yeah, and what I'm picking up from you is during, and we're going to dive deeper into your company that you're with now, but the two main shows, Survivor and Top Chef. I mean, these were shows that were very new, and then they evolved. It's funny because I watched Survivor because my mom, now it's old enough to where there's grandkids that are now on the show. But so taking Top Chef and Survivor, it seems like you had that knack and ability to kind of evolve with the show. And as it gained its footing, you were also adding in brands that made more sense without, but so touch a little bit deeper on that, like how so easy in the ad world, and we see it, and it makes me nauseous. It's like, God, that was forced. And I
Yeah,
see it way too often with influencers today. It's like, you just did this to get a check. Like
just did it to get a
you
check.
don't use that hair product. Like you don't drink that. Like there's no way you eat XYZ. But what was that like in the evolution? And then where we are today from branded content to native to now, it's imperative that you're, I love the word authenticity. Like it's imperative that you're authentic as a brand, but
Right.
also as the consumer that's using it.
Well, so we were not producers, so because I don't want Mark coming after me.
Sorry. Yeah.
So we were there, and I was involved for the first 3 seasons. I think it was 3 or 4 seasons, and then you move on to your point. So you've got a rhythm, you've got an understanding and a cadence, and if you planted the bulb correctly, that tree is going to grow and bloom.
Mm.
And at a certain point, you come back, you water it, but it should grow and thrive as individually and uniquely as it can without you hovering over it. And that's tends to be what we do. If you have to keep coming back, then you didn't plant the right bulb in the right seed.
Right.
So it's really from the jump. Like when you begin, it's not brain surgery, but it does require taking a moment and really trying to understand, is this something that in the short term addresses the KPIs and needs that your clients have had and asked you for, and then in the long term that this audience wants to stand by and grow with and evolve with. So the way you bring that up is spot on. Short term, we have KPIs, we have marketing and sales goals. We should hit those. How are we going to do that? Long term, will it evolve with the audience that we've selected? And somewhere in the gooey middle of those two things is success.
Yeah. What side note, would you ever go on Survivor if you had the opportunity?
Absolutely no, never not. When we did the first season, I was on the island, and I remember distinctly um, being on one side of the island with the crew.
Yep.
And I was there, and I had my fan. I had like a portable fan, kind of like this, I'm like doing all of this. And all of a sudden, because I am sometimes a little bougie, and all of a sudden, what is that? What's that? Do you all smell that? What is that smell? And I'm loud, Cleveland
Mhm.
style. What is that smell? And they're shh. So wait, it's them. It's them. They're coming, because you're there on this island, right? So that it was at that moment. It was then when I got on the helicopter that took us off the island and back to the mainland that I was like, yeah, I
No,
like being on
thanks.
this side of the camera.
Yeah,
I like being on this side of the camera.
I love that. I think I'm the opposite. I think if given the opportunity, I would 100% be on there. I just need a toothbrush and I'd be good to go.
God bless you.
Yeah. So what I love that. So what was there a turning point that just kind of inspired Marissa to leave? Because you were very high up within the organization. You clearly had goals to get there. You were definitely probably made your dad very proud from him paying your rent for the first month and where you are. But was there a moment in 2019 that led to you to say, okay, now it's time for me to take that next step on my own?
um, I'll be honest, and I've said this before. I'm fairly transparent. I'm a Midwest gal. I like benefits and biweekly paychecks. So if my gut had said to me, "Yeah, you got this, and you're gonna ride this out till you retire, and then do whatever you want to do," but I don't know what it was, but there was just this nagging voice in my ear that said, everything's about to change. And I don't know that voice is saying to me, Marissa, if what you do and who you are is going to be able to ride that wave of change. And I look back, and so many of the people who were part of my generation and my class and even beyond and my community are not there. It's a whole different set of people and a whole different set of values, frankly. And I think that's a lot of what I was feeling. And so um, I left. And to this day, I feel so blessed because when I left, so many of the clients that I had worked with for so many years said, okay, here we come.
Mm,
And I think that's a testament to the
absolutely.
work I did, and the work I continued to do. And we have new clients. We have some of the same clients we've worked with for a million years. And it's that recognition and appreciation for what we're willing to put in as partners that keeps us going.
Yeah. So some of the biggest shot. I love the Midwest conversation though, by the way, because one of my good friends, he's just retired from the MLB, but he's a catcher from Cincinnati. And
Ah,
and my other good friend is swam at Harvard, and our sons and I are best friends, and he's from the Midwest. And it literally took me, you're the opposite, but it took me a good 3 or 4 years to where I was like, I don't know if this guy likes me, but it was that Midwest, like, I'm gonna feel you out. And
yeah.
it was the southern side of me that was like overly boisterous and like a hospital and all the things that we are in the South. So it was kind of a chess match there.
Well, I had Cafe Duma, Cafe Duma. Is that it?
Cafe
Coffee
du
this,
Monde? Mhm.
yeah,
Oh, perfect.
coffee this morning.
Oh,
So
I love
there,
it.
it was
Well
like I was, but no beignet, so I really wasn't in
yeah.
Nolans. Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure to send you, being a New Orleans native, we'll make sure to send you a king cake too, which
Oh
is
yes,
the greatest thing ever
with the little baby inside.
with the
Yes, it
baby
is.
inside, yeah. So
It's
so for you, so what were some of the biggest challenges and opportunities you saw as a minority female founder in the media space? And we're not talking very long ago. We're talking 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
um, I think that when I launched, being an identifying as an African American woman and the work that I could and would do and representation I provided was of a benefit.
Mhm.
I think that during COVID, which aligned with a lot of civil and racial injustice and unrest, it was a benefit. I think today, if I had $1 for the many clients who have stepped back and said, "Well, we can't get involved in DEA and I say to them, "But we do microcultural, multicultural marketing." One is an internal impact, and one is an external extension
Mhm.
for revenue, right? So one is internal impact, and the other is external revenue generation. I'd get behind me in the revenue generation because we've shown success time and time again. But because I am an African American woman, I get lumped in DEA and I, even though that's not what I'm doing. And clients are running scared. So I would say, in short, we launched and we've done great work, and in my messy shelf behind me you can see the in these years all of them, we've won almost 30 awards in that time.
Huge.
And I'm very proud of all of them. And we've you know shown, I think, something like, you know $40 million worth of client value in terms of savings or efficiencies or added value, and then it just billions of eyeballs and impressions. So even though we've done all that great work, we're at an impasse now today as I sit here because I'm a Black woman and people are scared.
Yeah. Which is I don't want to just be very brash about it, but it's kind of silly, right?
Yeah,
It's like and maybe it's the southern part of me coming out, but it's kind of like especially in today's world. I think you said it best earlier. It's like or you actually talked about it on stage a good bit. Like you look if I'm a brand and I come in and I know who my audience is and then I scan the agency and I don't see anyone that can represent,
that's right.
not necessarily what you physically look like as well, but like you have to have some sort of like something. And don't try the, not to be blunt, but don't try the like, oh, hold on, let's go get the, because we're
Let's
presenting,
just
let's go
right.
grab this, one ethnic person, an Asian guy and put him in here because we know that this is Sheen and they want to see like it's touch on that a bit more. Like that's what you've built your agency around is what you call cultural competency, right?
Right. And we have what I call a variance of voice. And
Mhm.
so native tongue communications, we literally are fluent in Spanish, uh, Korean, Vietnamese, Tagala. I mean, someone who speaks one of those languages is within the doors of the confines of the walls of native tongue communications, because I think that's so important. I just think I don't know a lot. I don't know what I don't know.
Mhm.
And if I want to know it, then I'm going to go to the source. And that's how I live my life, and that's how I think you should build a marketing or advertising framework. But at the same time, I've won awards for campaigns that target non-Hispanic white men ages 18 to 24, and I am not.
Mhm.
But that's where we circle back to that empathy. So I'm willing to understand, think like that, put myself in their shoes. That doesn't frighten me, that doesn't scare me, and I walk away a better person because I've learned something that I didn't know. I think a lot of people, if you said to them, you're going to target African American women ages 25 to 35, and they were not that, it would frighten the hell out of them. and
Mhm.
they are not comfortable. There's a level of being uncomfortable that people have to get past in understanding that audience and putting yourself in their shoes.
And it's kind of it's like the old days of, yeah, I think of Mad Men. Like, you have to actually know and try the product as well. So
Right,
there's one thing just to be the cultural side of it, and but I love that. I love that statement of just like you have to be uncomfortable because that's what we do as media and advertisers. Because to both of our friends' points earlier, you're telling a story and you're giving content and context to something that ultimately the brand wants to sell.
that's right.
So make sure that you tell me that story. And I think in the world that we live in today, where like authenticity is huge, like I think we saw this massive rise of like microbreweries, and then all the big guys bought them all up because they really liked the story. It was
Right.
like, how cool is that? Like they
But
brew this
how are
here.
they doing today? Kind of
Yeah.
like I said, let's track and see how Will I Am is doing. What happened to those? What, unfortunately, too often, then they get gobbled up and they lose all of the things that made them special, and then they, end up failing. And then someone points a finger and says, "Oh my God, I spent money on you because you were so successful and you were going to add to my bottom line, and now you're failing." Well, that's because I'm not me.
Yep.
I'm not me.
Yep.
You wanted me, and I came in and you turned me into something else. And that something else is not what was going to get what you wanted me to do, achieve what you wanted me to achieve.
Yeah, and not to stay on like the beer liquor side of things, but then you do see brands like Brown Forman and others that have kept that heritage, and on on the creative side, they tell that story and
Yeah,
they dive deep into the history, and that's imperative because otherwise, what's going to happen is to your point, people stop buying whiskey brand XYZ, and then they go find the next one, and then it gets gobbled up. But I think in the world that we live in, like people want to know, they want to know the story, they want to know the culture behind the story, they want to know that there's something real and it's not just this like, here's the product. It's like,
right.
well, tell me the story behind it.
What is again, you can just push something out there. You can push a product or a service out there. You can get some facts going or close to facts going and write a story and push it out. Or you can build a true narrative that makes connective tissue to the audience you really want to speak to and pull them in because it's so engaging and it's so
Mhm.
impactful and it's exactly what they want to hear when they want to hear it, which is basic advertising.
Yeah, just tell me a story and
Just
then I'll
basic
make the decision.
advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So obviously to your point, like cultural competency, it's not a nice to have, but it's imperative for brands. Otherwise, they go away.
right.
What how can brands, in your opinion, and how your agency functions, how can they avoid checking that box on diversity and instead be, I don't know, genuine, empathetic, and have like actual true connections? Like how are
Yeah.
you telling that story for brands when they come in?
It all begins with the audience. So we've banked on this idea of microculturalism and microcultural cohorts, and whether it be the data that I've invested in, and I'm eating bologna sandwiches because I've invested, and the tools and the algorithms that we've built around them, and the people that help us put together uh, these what we call innate analytics and innate insights. It's one thing to research it and say, I researched it, it must be true. And sometimes that is. It's another thing to say, I lived it. It is true because I lived it, and it is true because I can back up what I'm saying with these facts. That's a rarity. When you have that, then I mean that's the North Star. That's the
Mhm.
and that's why the cultural competency and the variance of voice, because the more people who have that variance of voice and can say, not only I lived it, I can tell you this is it, but also now let's look at the analytics and the way we put it together through our tools and the lens that we look at it. And bring you this audience that is absolutely perfect for your product. So you're not wasting it. The efficiency and the effectiveness is what we're really going for in that moment, because if we have the perfect audience, then we know they're going to react and we're going to pull them into your product or service.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're using a good bit of data as well. So maybe that lends itself to the next question, but today's media landscape is so fragmented, and then when you add, culture into it, and a very micro culture, to your point, like it's not as easy in our our listeners that listen all the time, they're probably nauseated for me saying this, but back in the day, it was super easy. It was like you buy newspaper, radio, TV. Certain times of the day, you bought soap operas, you bought, the evening news, and then if you had some extra money, you'd buy out of home. But in today's universe, it is so fragmented, the media landscape. And then when you dive into these micro cultures, I mean, how do you handle that? How do you reach that diverse audience in such a complex media landscape that's out there today?
We ask them.
Hmm.
We ask them. We point blank, once we've fixated on who we think this perfect audience is, and we have the facts and the data, qualitative and quantitative, to back up and rationalize what the audiences we've created, we ask them, where are you? We track them. We stalk them. We stalk them online. We stalk them wherever they are, and we create these paths of, we call them kind of this path of chaos.
Hmm.
It's a path of chaos, and once you can walk through or follow the path of chaos and figure out your way from A to B to C, then you're saying something and you're doing something. Everyone walks a path of chaos in 2025. No one's back to, I woke up, I turned on TV, there were 3 stations, I got in the car, I listened to the radio, I sat at my desk, maybe I listened to the radio, I got back in the car, I listened to the radio, I got home, there were 3 stations, and I was done. That's just, if there is that person, I really, really, really want to meet them, because they would be a fascinating case study. So no one is that, and most people are, in fact, walking a path of chaos. So the question becomes, how do you break through that path of chaos? You ask them, you
Hmm.
stalk them, you really get to know them, and your listeners are going to get tired of me, but I mean, that's where that empathy comes through. So if I'm not willing to, sit through, you know, I, what we believe at Native Tongue is a big part of some of the challenges we as humanity are having is because we choose not to be empathetic or open ourselves up to the fact that there might be alternate ideas
Hmm.
and solutions and opportunities and options. And so I'm not saying one should believe in something that is disgusting or repulsive, but at the same time, it exists in the world. You have to understand it, because then you can avoid it and maybe even clean it up. If you refuse to acknowledge it and only acknowledge what you believe to be right and what you believe to be your facts and your data, then you're never going to get the win. So we open ourselves up to whatever that audience is. We understand them at the highest of levels and the deepest of levels. We ask the questions when we can, that first party, zero part, what do they call it? 0P, 1P data.
Yep. Yep.
And then we come back and say, this is the audience, this is where they are, get them what they want to hear when they want to hear it.
Well, and I think it's also throwing in there that easy button where what you just described is extremely complex and it's a lot of work.
It is.
But
It
for a
is.
brand, that's what you need in a very chaotic. Like I don't think I've ever had a day that looked, act, and behaved the same way as media consumption. Like in my mind, I want it to be,
It
but it never happened.
amazes me that on a daily basis, I read more and more articles that say, in this extraordinarily complex and chaotic life that each of us live, we want to embrace AI, and AI is going to help us understand it. I don't, that's like a magnet. I don't
Mhm.
understand how someone thinks that oversimplification is the way to understand what is becoming an extraordinarily complex life and world we're living in. No, no, that's what we're missing. And so if you're willing to be brave and bold and resolute and say, no, I don't want necessarily the easy route. Do I want it to help me do what I need? Sure, but I don't want the easy route. I want the right route. I want the route that's really going to get me to where I want to go. And in the end, because I know I'm going to make the impact and the sales I want and hit all of my KPIs, it's worth it.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I would argue that some of the greatest shows, greatest movies, greatest products that I've ever discovered didn't find its way through a traditional route. And it may have been word of mouth. It may have been some original old school, and not to plug out of home, because that's not what this podcast is about. But I heard so many people I can that's what they talked about. It's like, we have to beat the algorithm. How do we beat the algorithm? How do we beat the algorithm? Okay, just spend more money towards the algorithm. And then a lot of people were like, maybe we need to get back to more traditional formats, and a disruptive moment in someone's day that can seamless be a part of their day is a roadside billboard, or a hand painted wall, or a digital billboard as you're inside of the elevator, or whatever it may be. It's like, you can talk to a consumer throughout their journey in a much different way. You can use algorithms, but I've kind of coined this term of like, out of home can start to become that anti-algorithm, to where if you're
For sure.
scrolling, our scrolls are going to look different. Ads that are served to you and I are different. But again, going back to that tribal cultural aspect of it, what we do during our day may be a lot alike, and it can introduce us to that product where the algorithm would have never, ever have presented that product for the two of us.
I'm a huge advocate of out of home, traditional out of home, digital out of home, and all the different ways and varieties of which it can come to life. And being someone who grew up in Cleveland, I out of home for African Americans was what put a lot of folks on the path to cool cigarettes, and right, like, why? Oh, look at the billboard that's there. So I know the value of what out of home can bring when we think about fandoms and communities and cohorts, and I think it's underutilized and underappreciated, and I'm always here for it.
Yeah. And then obviously, you being from the land, is the LeBron billboard right across Wallscape that Nike had forever
Yeah,
outside of the
yeah,
arena. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Iconic.
mean, and it's iconic. It's iconic. It's iconic.
So as we kind of wrap up here, personal inspiration. So looking back, what do you consider your proudest moment in your career so far? And that's a tough question.
Um, I think that I tell this story. So left Omnicom, launched Native Tongue in 2019. I remember saying to a lot of folks, if I can get through a year as an entrepreneur, because I'm an entrepreneur, then maybe I'm on to something. And New Year's Eve 2020, I looked at my husband. I was like, look at that year under my belt. We got this. It's going to be great. And that was January 2020. So fast forward 2 months, and boom, COVID. We were already working on a project that we had created for a client, and it was the largest grant solely for African American women for a corporation to ever give. The largest grant solely for African American women, specifically entrepreneurs, for a corporation to ever give. And so obviously with COVID, we were right on money. We had begun it pre even not even knowing what COVID was, and then we were just right on money. And I remember getting a note from a woman that won one of the grants because we increased it, and then we gave multiple grants out because there was such need during COVID. And a woman sent a note, and she said, this grant was not life changing, it's life saving,
Wow.
because I don't know what I was going to do. I literally had no money. I was at my last dollar, and I just, the world is collapsing around us, and my world had collapsed, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a part of it.
Wow.
So this grant is not life changing, it's life saving. So thank you so much for thinking of us when nobody else would. And so that's not bad.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Yeah, and especially something that'll wake you up the next day to say, we're going to continue down this path of native.
Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Why it doesn't exist still, I don't know, but
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, that was a lovely moment, and
Yeah.
that helps get you through.
Well, I guess so with the last question, and I'm going to ask the question and then I'm going to like re-ask it for a purpose.
Uh-oh.
So as we wrap here, so what advice would you give women with diverse talent, look, act, and behave different to break into media marketing today? And then I'm going to put a line through that. And I'm going to say, because our entire conversation was really more around what advice would you give to humans that are in a situation with such diverse talents, not what they look, act, and behave like, but just their talents, God given talents, how would you aspire them to break into media or marketing or just anything that they want to do? Because one of the biggest takeaways for our listeners that I loved about you is your energy and who you are as a person and your personality. And that's why I was like, that's the aha, that's the end question for her, because you drew me in, and I'm sure you draw so many of your clients in, and the story that you just told. But what advice would you give to humans?
Be open. And so I went to Howard University, which is an HBCU, a
Mhm.
predominantly black HBCU in Washington, D.C. It's one of my proudest accomplishments and achievements, going to Howard, and the lifelong relationships I have maintained since then. So leaving Howard and going to Madison Avenue, or Sixth Avenue in this case, it was jarringly different,
Yeah.
jarringly different. And I, in my innocence and naivete, thought, well, my friends and the people who will be my tribe will be there's not a lot of us, but the few people that look and sound like me. And that didn't happen. Now, there were a few, but there were one or two women who look and sounded like me who really didn't want to see me succeed. I'll just say that. And made it hard for me, and made it uncomfortable for me, and made me sad. And in the end, I have many, many, many mentors who do look and sound like me, and I feel blessed. But two of my greatest mentors in that time were non-Hispanic white men
Mhm.
who were from Connecticut, Darien, and San Diego, and couldn't have been less like me,
Mhm.
but saw all of me because they were willing to see all of me. And I think when you're willing to do that, you don't just benefit the person, but you benefit yourself. You build that connection, that bridge that can be a lifelong benefit. So open your eyes and be open to someone who might not look and sound like yourself, but who could be spot on for what you need in your life.
Yeah. I love that. Very inspirational. And especially because it's that's what makes us so unique as humans, is it's our personalities and who we are.
Until the aliens arrive. What is it? 100 days, right? Isn't there some spaceship hurtling toward Earth? Is
Oh
that
gosh.
right?
Yeah. Who
In the
knows?
morning? We got 100 days, and then we'll deal with green people.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they're nice. Hopefully they have great personalities. And then that could be the next segmentation of
That's my next
your micro.
microcultural
That's your
segment. Yes,
microculture.
the
I just hope they're a
aliens.
part of my tribe too. So well, listen, I knew this was going to be so much fun. I know our listeners are going to greatly enjoy this. So I'm very grateful for your time. I'm so excited for your next career journey and your continued success with your agency, and more importantly, who you are as a personality. Like, don't ever shy away from that.
Oh,
That's what got me
thank
so
you.
excited. So
Thank you.
I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you.
me. This has been great. This has been really fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend.